Welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable. In this episode, Andy Cloke joins us to show off his excellent Airtable app, Data Fetcher. True to its name, Data Fetcher allows Airtable users to manually or automatically import data from any number of APIs directly into their bases. Andy talks about the development process for such a useful app and all the challenges that came with, such as making a wide release app flexible enough to work for most users. He did so by implementing a robust user interface, which entailed anything from combining multiple pre-made components to creating his own page navigation system. We get a guided walkthrough of how one could set up the app, as well as some examples of the app's implementation. Speaking of wide releases, Data Fetcher is now available on the Airtable marketplace, so you can try it out yourself.
Cool. The base I'm going to show you is kind of like a analytics dashboard. So this is actually the data for Airtable, all the paid subscribers. So we didn't really touch on that, but the app is basically like a freemium model. So you can make like 100 requests a month, API requests a month on the free plan. And then if you want to make more than that, or you want to schedule a request to run in the background rather than you manually running them, that's a paid feature. So you upgrade through the website. This is, I'm pulling in the customer data from Stripe, which I'm using for billing. I've made sure there's no email addresses or anything that would identify anyone in here, but we've just got the subscription amounts and some dates and stuff. So we can see here we've got the amounts, the date of the subscription being created, status, and then the plans. And the way I'm getting this data is using the app. So if I open up the Data Fetcher app, so I land on this home screen, which is a list of like all the API requests that I've previously saved. And so we can create a new one using this create button here, or we can go to one that I've saved before using just clicking on it. And then we can see all the details of it here. So this is what you mentioned. It's a fairly complex UI as Airtable apps go. But essentially we've got the ability to set up all the different bits that you'd want for an API request. So we've got a name to save it against. We've got a URL, and then we can set headers, parameters, and a body for the API request. So here, to hit the Stripe API, we need to set like an authorization header. I've got like a variable saved in Airtable that lets me do that. We then say, when I go get this API request, when I make this API request, which table do I want to put that data into? So we've got a table picker there that lets me say, I want the subscriptions table and a view. And then we can say, how do I want that data to update the table? So maybe I just want to add new records every time I make the API request, or maybe I want to update the actual data that's in there already. We can then set a schedule. So this is like a paid feature. So we can say, make this API request every hour, on the hour, every few days, or every day, every week on particular days. And then we've got this field mapping. So this basically says, how do I want the data that I've got coming back from the API to like map to the table? So for each field that comes back, and if we look at the Stripe API docs, these are all different fields. So there's quite a few. We then choose like which ones we want to keep, which ones we want to filter out, and how that should map to the table. So if I run this now, you can see it makes the API request, and then it updates the data in the table. And we can see then 3 new ones came in the end. So this is obviously just one example, but we can put pretty much any REST API in here. So a couple of things I did mention. There's also pagination. So most APIs won't give you all the data in one go. They'll let you go through it like page after page. So we can actually set that up and say the type of pagination that it uses, how many pages I want to fetch, or just fetch everything until nothing comes back from the API. And that lets us basically pull, you could see when the API request then that it ran like 3 times. And that pulled in like 10 subscriptions at a time. So that's the basics of like making an API request with Data Fetcher. Now that we've got all this subscription data in the base, we can do some kind of analytics and stuff like that on it. So we can see at the bottom here, we've got the sum of all the subscriptions each month. So that gives us like the MRR of the app. We can also link it. So Stripe have another API endpoint called products that lets us fetch like all the different plans that people might subscribe to. So using Data Fetcher, again, I've pulled in all the different products here with their IDs and their names. And then we can actually link those two things. So subscriptions are linked to plans, and the app, the Data Fetcher app, when it runs and pulls in new data, it's going to create those links and update those links for us. By doing that, we can then add roll-ups. So I can see how many subscriptions have I got on each of the plans, and then how much revenue can I attribute to each of the different plans. So yeah, that's the kind of basics. Those are like the two things I've looked at for this dashboard so far. And then using all that data that we've got pulled in here and is coming in each hour, I've then used the scripting app to create some metrics using that data. So I've got a script here that basically goes through each day, fairly complex script, goes through each day and basically creates a metric for each historical day. So I've got what was the monthly revenue at that point, how many subscriptions did I have, and then dividing one by the other, how much revenue does each user create. Using this table, we've then got the chart app that, if I full screen this, shows us all those metrics over time. So I don't know if you've ever seen tools like Beermetrics or Chartmogul, or those kind of SaaS analytics platforms, but like this is kind of a fairly lightweight version of those, but all set up using free apps. So we've got all these metrics over time. And then there's one more feature that I think is worth mentioning, which is the ability to basically run an API request using some of the data like in your table. So using the Data Fetcher UI, we can basically insert a reference to the table. So this API is for like getting stock prices. And the way that it works is you hit this kind of base URL, and then you put in a ticker here, so like a stock ticker. And the way that this works is, so you'd put in like Apple or whatever. I've got a table with a load of those tickers set up here. So I can basically say, use that table, pick the ticker field, click confirm, and then that's now got a reference back to the table. So when this runs, it's going to like dynamically insert that ticker value into the URL and run an API request for that. So obviously there's a bunch of different use cases for this, but this one is basically for each row, each record in the table, go and get the stock price for it and bring it back, and then update that record. So we set it there in the URL, and then in the advanced settings, we say run it on multiple records. So don't just run one request, run it on each. And then if I run this, we should see these prices here. They update. So just for kind of the purpose of the demo, I've basically linked that to the MRR number and said, how many shares could I buy with the current like monthly revenue? So yeah, that's the basics. I think one thing I found with the app is that the use cases are really wide, like really varied. So I've seen people getting crypto prices, getting their timesheets from Clockify and other time tracking software. Seen people pulling in like properties from Hostfully. Like they're really just broad use cases. And so yeah, hopefully that gives you a flavor of some of the stuff you can do with it.
It does. And it was also a nice demonstration of, we said earlier that apps usually are designed to do one thing. And it was a good demonstration of how you can use multiple apps together to create a full dashboard. So pulling in data using Data Fetcher, doing a brief run of a script to kind of consolidate your data together, and then a chart app to display it visually.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, I think that's a nice thing about Airtable at the moment, particularly the script app. I've really noticed that recently. They're like, you can do anything basically within there. Like, there's really no limit. Like, I think like when you've got that ability to add custom code, there's really like very little like you can't just do with a little bit of technical knowledge.
Yeah, it's a nice added feature. Last year, 2020, was a lot of different features added to Airtable that dramatically increased its usability overall. And recently, they've added scripts as a thing you can get from the marketplace. So even if you yourself are not comfortable coding in JavaScript, there's a chance that you could just go on the marketplace and there's already a script that does what you were looking for. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think when I've got a few more examples like this, I think I'd like to, like put the scripts on the script template marketplace. That would be cool.
It would be. Do you mind going into one of the settings for any one of them?
Sure. Yeah.
When I said complicated UI, just as an example, correct me if I'm wrong. In the URL field, there is a button that's overplaced on the right-hand side, right? So you're combining two components essentially in the same visual space to augment the functionality of a simple single line text field.
Yeah. So there's an icon,
including a tooltip.
A tooltip, and then that brings up a modal. There's no, actually, I think the one missing UI piece at the moment is like a nice tabs component. So you can use these.
Yeah.
They don't really give, the tabs below don't really link to the switch like that nicely.
Yeah.
So I think that would be, but that's probably the only one I've noticed they're missing. But yeah, there is quite a lot going on this UI. Same with these rows here. We've got that same button again, and then we've got ability to take them off here and
to add and remove.
And this parameters updates the other one dynamically. That was really fiddly to do.
What? What? Okay, when I have guests scheduled for the podcast and they're demoing a product of some sort, I always check it out ahead of time. I didn't even notice that this could do that. That's so cool and useful.
Thanks.
Wow. All right. Well, I think this is a great example of a custom app that seems to have thought of everything. And you've just got a lot of nice things going on there in terms of UI. I'm a particular fan of good UI. So a sticky footer at the bottom, like we're seeing where your back, save, and run buttons are. That's super nice. Like I said, the overlaying of a button on top of an input field so you can add variables. That's very nice.
Thanks. Yeah, I've copied a lot of Airtable's stuff. So like, for example, this one, when you create a request, it highlights the name field and then you can fill that out. And like that straight from their automations feature, or like when you create like a new table base or something like that.
Yeah.
It creates it so you don't have to like focus it and stuff. But
I tried to do autofocus when you change the current page. No. It was when I opened up a dialog box and I, for whatever reason, couldn't get it to autofocus. I'm sure I'll figure it out, but just another nice little thing that you've added.
That's a particular quirk on the dialogue because I've noticed the same. If you
so I'm not crazy.
You're not crazy, no.
Oh, no. Thank God. I thought I was just bad at making apps. I was like, what? Why doesn't this work at all?
This is turning into a therapy group.
It
Yeah,
always does. Every episode I host, it's just the last half is just therapy.
yeah, I think you can probably do it programmatically. That's how I did this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you open the dialogue, use like a reference to create focus that input, but just using the autofocus prop doesn't work.
Yeah. But my goodness, so great. So you said it up at the top that this is a freemium app. Even so, do users need to have an account with datafetcher.io to use it?
Yeah, they do. So you can sign up within the app. So I'll just sign out and show that. So when you first install, you get this screen. So I've kind of pre-filled these with like the ones that that Airtable exposes, like the name and the email. Then you need to kind of create a password, verify your email, and then come back to the app. The reason for doing that was essentially because people are putting like API keys in, they're putting very secret information. And so I want to store that like not locally, but like on a back end. Because Airtable advised that you shouldn't be storing like any kind of secret stuff like in the store that they give you, like global config. So it's fine for like UI stuff, but people have got their Stripe API key. That's a bad idea to put it in there. So that's stored instead, like encrypted in Datafetcher backend. And to kind of authenticate users against that backend, I get them to create an account. So it's quite a bit of friction. Not totally happy with it from like a UX perspective, but like it does have the massive advantage of being secure. I think one thing I might look at is having a way to like play around with an API request without signing up. So you can just try without signing up. And then if you want to save stuff, you want to schedule or anything like that, at that point you get prompted to sign up.
I'll call it a holdup. One of the major holdups for custom app developers right now is it's a lot of work to make these apps and to make them great and mostly foolproof. So when you release an app to the marketplace, despite its name, there's no real inherent way to make premium apps that people would pay for additional services. For instance, like Datafetcher, you need a premium account to schedule API requests. So there's kind of back and forth in the developer community. We're all coming up with our own different solutions for having users sign up for an account with the app developer and then using that, integrating it into the app to have kind of what we're seeing here now, a login screen. Do you use a established system for collecting user information? I don't know how best to ask this question. We've seen people use Gumroad or Outseta or License Spring to have users sign up and create accounts in kind of the back end. Or did you build your own?
So I use Stripe, the super well-known way to charge people online. I think that was fairly straightforward. I'd used Stripe once before, so it's kind of just the default choice to go to.
Yep.
And then for subscription stuff like this, like the API is really nice. I think Gumroad or any of those would work nicely as well. Slightly different flow. You'd probably put the API key directly or whatever thing that Gumroad gives you like straight into the app. But so I've basically got the users are stored in authenticated with Firebase auth, and then Stripe is basically handled like on my website. On Datafetcher.io, like they go through an upgrade flow from there. And then Stripe gives you the out the box like checkout pages. So I'm using those as well, rather than building all that myself. So they give you both like a checkout flow and then a billing management page. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's just an out the box way for people to like upgrade, downgrade, cancel. So yeah, probably save like quite a few days of development time just using all their out of the box stuff.
Yeah. And that's more or less at the request of Airtable that no payment processing happens within an Airtable app. So, just as a note, if you're going to be building a custom app and you're going to have premium or gated features, if you're asking people to pay for it, it does have to take place like on a separate website.
Yeah, I think that is definitely one of the challenges at the moment. It's still, even when using something like Stripe, it's a lot of stuff to build yourself. They've hinted that they're going to roll out like a billing, a way to build people in the apps, but I think they're a long way off. It's probably months or years off that actually being launched.
Yeah, it's probably not anytime soon, which is unfortunate, but there are examples of people who've successfully built their own solution, like Data Fetcher, that handles it on its own. One of the drawbacks of that is that you have separate accounts for each custom app that you might have, which might be fine, but you also have to deal with different billing subscriptions and whatnot. If you're billed to have a custom app in the first place, you need to have a premium workspace on Airtable. So you're being billed from Airtable. And then you're going to have separate bills from each premium custom app that you have, where it would be nice from a customer standpoint if you just get billed for all of your custom apps at the same time in the same invoice as your Airtable bill. Whenever they figure that out, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be really nice. I think I've had it quite easy because it's got a lot of back-end component to it. So I'm able to track usage, like manage customers and stuff like that. But if you built an app that's just front end, that's just does some UI thing, like that's a lot harder to gate off without storing like sensitive stuff in the front end. I know there's a couple that do that, like the bulk download attachments app. You need like a mini extensions subscription to do it. So I'm not sure how they're handling it in the front end, but it's definitely possible.
There's a bunch of different methods, and I wish I knew them all so that I could know them for when I build my apps. But this has been a great demonstration. Data Fetcher is currently available on the marketplace, and we'll have a link to your website in the description of this video so that people can sign up for an account for themselves and just go wild, it seems, with Data Fetcher. There's so much that you can do with it.
Great. Yeah, this has been really interesting. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to give it a like or hit us up on social @BuiltOnAir. We always love to hear your comments and suggestions. And don't forget to subscribe to catch new episodes when they release. It helps us keep the podcast going.